Alright, welcome to the new year. That means there's a new me and a new slate of anime to sink my teeth into. The changing the calendar always comes with a world of opportunity to adjust your habits for the better and to become an all-around better person, or you can just do more of the same like I do. No shame in that. Always great to get the new year off on the right foot, and before the dark gray winter days kill my motivation, let's start this year off right with 3 more random anime taken from the random anime generator, and we're going to give them 3 episodes to see if they're worth my time or best left in the old year. Some things never change. You know, my friends tell me that I may be a little too cynical when it comes to the seasonal chart. It's a running joke among us that every season is a light season until it isn't, and you know the new year might just be the perfect time to fix that. Though, when you've watched as much as I have and have as little time as I do, it's kinda par for the course. I do sometimes more nostalgically long for that period of time in the late 2010s when anime was still new to me and the seasonal chart was a sort of mystical promised land that could do no wrong. I didn't actually watch anything seasonally at the time, but you know, it's all flavor text for this wonderful medium we indulge in. It could never do anything wrong. For some reason, I remember 2019's Afterlost. Don't get me wrong, I never watched the show and didn't know a single thing about it going into this video, but I do pretty vividly remember this distinct poster of a blue-haired girl on a Vespa and some friends talking about it until they weren't. I don't know if that's a good or a bad sign. The show follows courier for hire Takio, who is tasked with bringing a blue-haired girl named Yuki to meet her father. The catch is that Yuki's father went missing a while ago during a mysterious incident that saw the entire city of Lost vanish in spectacular fashion. Yuki is the lone known survivor of the incident, and now a mysterious message claiming to be from her father is dragging her back into the city that nobody has been known to come back alive from. With his trusted Vespa and the assistance of his childhood friend Geek, Takio will have to take on a shadow organization known simply as the Agency, hell-bent on taking Yuki for themselves and the bizarre time-warping effects surrounding Lost if he wants to bring Yuki to her dad, if he's even alive at all. I dig me a show that has a pretty clear and distinct narrative structure built into it. It's not often we get these kinds of action-packed road trip anime, so that's already something the show has going for it. Vehicular combat is criminally underused in anime for kind of obvious reasons, and it gives Afterlost complexity to its encounters that few other shows have. The show also handles the mystery surrounding Lost pretty well, keeping the details close to its chest, and even the inklings of detail that we do get in the first couple episodes are a decent pull factor for the show. The characters are a little on the generic side, but do well enough together to hold my attention and drive the plot along. Conceptually, Afterlost is pretty solid, but unfortunately the same cannot be said for the production, as you may have already surmised. If I told you this was done by Madhouse and not some no-name small studio, would you believe me? The show's concept is certainly resource-intensive for animation, and you can really feel the production cutting every corner it can just to make sure they can have a final product. The camera work is overly shaky, CGI is everywhere, and the characters themselves are often frequently off-model. None of this is helped by the blunt nature of the writing that hits the ground running and only does an okay job of establishing its setting before it's throwing magic government officials, secret research facilities, and espionage at you, and that kind of whiplash is on par with what Hortensia Saga tried to pull off, and we all know how well that went. The characters are kind of messy too. The sidecasts are all over the place, throwing even more complexity into a narrative that didn't need it quite yet. And while the main cast is mostly fine, even they can struggle to carry the series on their shoulders. There's something interesting here, that's for sure, I'll give it that, but whether it's worth sitting through, that's another story altogether. I've watched worse, but I've certainly watched better as well. These last couple of years have not been particularly great for original anime. I mean, the industry at large is more surviving than thriving right now, but this becomes particularly noteworthy when you consider that Crunchyroll had to nominate the marginal service for Best Original Anime at last year's Crunchyroll Awards. Like, guys, at that point, just nominate Precure. I know you can do it. Originals have had a pretty big impact on the medium, though, and many of the most creative and impactful works to grace this medium have been originals. Should be obvious why, but I've already ranted about adaptation before, and this isn't the place for that. All you need to know is that original anime are great. They could never do anything wrong. Released in 2018 by Studio Gokumi, Katana Maidens Toju no Miko is an original action fantasy show about cute girls that fight each other with swords, because that is just peak late 2010s if I've ever seen it. The story follows Kanami Eto, a young sword fighter who is chosen to represent Minaseki Academy in a sword fighting tournament between the 5 elite sword fighting schools. Get ready for a lot of sword fighting. Kanami is training at Minaseki to become a Toji, a special elite shrine maiden who are tasked with fighting the evil Aratama who will destroy humanity if they aren't stopped. During the tournament, she eventually comes in contact with the serious Hiyori Jujo. After the end of the tournament is disrupted in a grand fashion, the two end up running away together, putting themselves at odds with the organization that manages the Toji and their friends and classmates. What follows is a story of sabotage, friendship, and, well, swords. Lots and lots of swords. Katana Maidens is one of those shows that prove being an original does not always mean you're original. The story bears a strong resemblance to many similar shows of the time that also rely on a large female cast with few male characters that fight in their series select combat against a generic alien enemy. To its credit, Katana Maidens does have pretty decent production values with some serviceable action animation to hold its fights together. Studio Gokomi is no stranger to this type of production, having previously put their names in the likes of Yuki Yuna, Hinoro Mosaic, and Tsurudere Children for this one among odd things. The show feels very safe, but in that brings a level of polish that keeps any major flaws from really bubbling up. The one kicker though is that the sanding down of the show's rougher parts also applies to its characters. Putting it bluntly, the entire cast of Katana Maidens are extremely dry and forgettable. With a cast this large, it's bound to happen, but even our main cast is safe, as they're pretty standard carbon copies of tropes you've seen echoed across so much of the 2010s. It's kind of similar to other works like Girls in Panzer or Kantai Collection in that regard, but with a lot less focus on its characters, giving very little reason to actually care for any of the actual plot going on. The whole thing ends in this weird middle ground where the action is solid, but the meat behind it is severely lacking. Even at that point, you can always find a better action series if raw action is all you want. I guess it isn't entirely uncommon to see an original go this route, and hey, money doesn't grow on trees. But when the world is your oyster, I just don't know why you take this approach. I guess at the end of the day, there is a market for a series like this, but I don't know how much I am a part of it. Outside of morbid curiosity, of course. Well, there goes my New Year's resolution. There is something to be said about the slow descent into madness that is modern isekai. I mean, harem comedies and moe slice-of-life anime went through similar phases in the 2000s and 2010s respectively, so I guess I can't be too surprised. Still, it is wild seeing what some authors will do with just a little too much self-awareness. In another example of humanity straying further and further away from God with every passing day, Reborn as a vending machine, I Now Wander the Dungeon is about exactly what the title says. One day, our nameless protagonist is killed by a vending machine that falls off of a truck and is, get this, reborn as said vending machine in a fantasy world. He is eventually discovered by the perky, if a little dumb adventurer Lamis, who quickly becomes his partner in crime, gifting him the new name Boxo. Together, the two do everything you would do if you owned a magic vending machine, like spreading its spoils to the local townsfolk and lugging it on adventures into the deepest layers of the, get this, dungeon. Normal vending machine things, I know. That concept sounds incredibly stupid, and yet it somehow kind of works. Usually shows of this caliber run out of steam pretty quickly, but Vending Machine keeps its gusto going with a surprisingly strong and lively cast of characters and depth to its central gimmick that keep things from going too stale in the first 3 episodes. Limus really is the star of the show here, using her infectious energy to bridge the gap between the laid-back Boxo and the rest of the world. The show varies between pseudo-slice-of-life plots, Boxo helping a colorful cast of townsfolk, and dungeon diving that makes plenty of use of our MC's vending machine status. Plot be damned, it's kind of just a surprisingly fun time. The question does ultimately come down to longevity though. While enjoyable, the cast and plot lack an actual narrative depth. It doesn't shield itself too well from the concept inevitably running dry, and while that is not a problem for it now, it can pretty quickly become one down the line. The show is drenched in that happy-go-lucky, pleasant energy that so many similar shows have, but the atmosphere can tire quickly, and I don't think the cast have enough going for them to keep things going after it does. Don't get me wrong, it was a pleasant sampler, but sometimes that's about all you need. If the show doesn't offer much more beyond that, what's really the point? Afterlost is the kind of show that makes me genuinely baffled that Madhouse of all people were behind it, but I guess sometimes you do just have to pay the bills. While I do appreciate what it's doing conceptually, and it does have some legs to stand on, they were not nearly strong enough to prevent it from getting dropped. The production is one of the biggest messes I've discussed in this series, and I'll remind you that I did cover Kamikatsu. The characters and janky pacing were the final nail in the coffin, keeping the show falling short of reaching its final destination. Maybe in another timeline, but not even idols could save this one. Katana Maidens really is something, isn't it? More a product of a time when stuffing as many girls into a show as possible was a viable strategy to not financially sink yourself, but not a viable strategy now to keep me from dropping it. The characters just don't do anything for me, and if I'm looking for a show with cute girls that I can just let my eyes glaze over for, I'm still gonna go get something with a little more bite. It's just easier this way. Man, I kinda hate how much I didn't hate Reborn as a vending machine. The plot is pretty much non-existent, but with characters this surprisingly enjoyable, it held my attention enough to seal the deal. The show does a good job keeping things from getting too tired with its expansive roster of characters, and further developing the relationship between Boxo and Lammas, though don't get your hopes up. Ambitious? No, but I don't think every show needs to be, and Vending Machine is more than fine with just existing as it does. Kind of respectable, actually. And with that, we come to the end of our first episode of the new year. As always, I hope I was helpful in narrowing down your planning list. Let me know down below what your thoughts are on the series that I've discussed here. Gonna be honest, I fully expected this month to be another bust, but I guess I got lucky. Probably for the better. If you want to see more videos like this, you can head over to the playlist linked down below to see what other series I've dredged up, and you can also hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell to be notified of the next episode in the series when it drops. You can follow me on all the websites here for more, and until next time, remember to stay salty.